on respiratory disorders, and unfortunately, it's too vast a topic. I would need 3 or 4 sessions on it. So I'm just going to do something that I used to do at our hospital when I was teaching there about more than 10 years ago. I'm going to turn this into more like a tutorial and an outpatient clinic. I remember in the outpatient clinic, we used to see around 30, 35 patients in those 2 hours. And my time was spent mainly teaching Materia Medica live on the case, and pick up symptoms as a patient comes in and start talking about some drug, and then from that drug go to the second drug and then the third. And that's what I hope I can do today. As soon as you feel there's a data overload, let me know and I can slow down and unwind so that you guys don't get too much of stuff getting in. In our hospital, I remember a case comes in, and the student will start with the history. While the history is going on, I might just pick up one peculiar or one interesting symptom and ask the students if they knew which remedies would cover that. And then from that remedy, we would do some relationship and differentiation, go to another remedy, and then the third. And that's how it is it's like a tree that used to spread. And that's what hopefully I'm going to try and do today. So I'm going to be different from what I normally do when I'm teaching at seminars and webinars, where I have a structured plan and I talk about maybe pathological, miasmatic, and constitutional approach. So today is going to be more freewheeling, and we'll just talk in general about some of the acute conditions, and maybe later how to go about examining a patient, and then stop. Because then if I go on to conditions like pneumonias, if I go into conditions like asthma, each of those would need 2 or 3 hours. So, and I have the material for it, but I don't have the time today. So one of the common things that I'm practicing in California right now for the past 8 or 10 years. After I left the homeopathic college, I came to the US, and I've been practicing here in 3 of the cities in California. And one of the things that which has become a bread and butter thing for homeopaths here is allergies. And patients come to us with acute allergies, and they need immediate improvement in their symptoms. They're really suffering. They've been trying every possible antihistaminics. They've been on steroids. They use Flonase drops, and many of them don't seem to respond at all. And then someone says, why don't you try homeopathy? And then they come for the treatment. So before we can think of giving a constitutional treatment and make sure that we can break that cycle, we also need to look at the acute drugs. There is a thought amongst some homeopaths that acute remedies should never be given. You should just give the constitution, nothing much but the constitutional. So help me God. They would swear on Hahnemann's organon and say, never give anything but the constitutional. Even the acute stage, wait and then give the constitutional again. But then in that case, why are these acute remedies there in our Materia Medica? You need to use them. If they've been proved and they have symptoms, why not use them instead of just being dogmatic about your constitutional remedies? So a patient comes to me and the presenting symptom is itching in the eyes. The eyelids are itching a lot. This remedy, ambrosia, is a remedy that has really worked wonders for us. We have been able to make the patients, many of our white patients, we have a mix of patients, maybe 80% might be Asian origin, but of the 20 to 30% that we have Mexicans coming to us, we have the white Caucasians, the Americans, we have the Filipinos who are also very much interested in homeopathy, and we have lots of Chinese patients who come to us. And some of them are new to homeopathy, but they've heard that traditional medicine is much better than conventional medicine, and they would like to try that. So ambrosia is the drug you should think of for itching in the eyelids. Ambrosia is the common weed that we find in California. In fact, it's found almost everywhere now. It's the ragweed, and the ragweed is a known allergen. So this is a homeopathic proving of the ragweed, and the drug ambrosia is going to work when you have itching mainly in the eyelids. You'll find them rubbing the eyelids all the time. There'll be people who will come to you with itching at the back of the nose, the posterior nares. That's the area that they find is irritating, and there's a lot of itching in that region. And you might find sometimes they do funny sound. They're trying to rub the tongue to the back of the nose to try and clear the itching. Think of Vaiathya for those people. And if you have itching in the nostrils as well as the roof of the mouth, we should think of Arendo. Now, Arendo is, you'll see lots of these kids who keep constantly rubbing the nose. And the mother says that the child keeps rubbing the nose all the time. Do something about it. I would think of Arendo as one of the remedies, especially when they also complain of a lot of itching in the hard palate and the soft palate. Now, if a person has all the parts affected, the eyes, the nose, the soft palate, the back of the nose, and also the ears and the scalp, and in fact itching all over, the remedy that sometimes becomes very useful is Sabedilla. The Sabedilla also has loud and violent sneezes. When they sneeze, all the glass panes will start shaking. They'll start vibrating. So you have very loud and violent sneezes with itching in the nostrils. So the itching and the tickling starts, and the patient starts sneezing. So Sabedilla would be a drug you could think of whenever there's itching everywhere. It's a generalized itching. And so it becomes an important remedy for all sorts of allergies, not only of the respiratory tract, but also the skin. In fact, Sabedilla is a drug also for itching in the anus and itching in the scalp. It becomes a good remedy for lice, by the way, and also for worms. Do you know which remedy has been mentioned in Kent's Materia Medica, where Kent went to visit his patient, and he found the patient's dog was rubbing his anus and his bum on the carpet, and he was constantly moving around by actually scraping along. He was scraping his anus and the bum area on the carpet. The remedy that he gave to the patient was something different, but for the dog, he prescribed Spigelia. So Spigelia is one more remedy you should think of for worms. In fact, the full name of Spigelia is Spigelia antihelminthica. So as I had warned you, I'm not going to stick to one remedy. I'm going to keep spreading my wings and taking you to different remedies, and then hopefully we'll come back to the respiratory tract. So remember, Sabedilla is also for worms. Sabedilla has got lice, but it is extremely useful for allergic responses, and especially when you have allergies involving the respiratory tract. Now, one more remedy that we have found very useful, and it should be useful even all over the world, especially where you have a lot of dust, is the remedy Solanum lycopersicum. And if you see in the nose, itching in the anterior chamber, worse, breathing any dust. Let's try and move this to the side, and you see hay fever marked with marked aggravation from breathing the least dust. In the repertory, you also have drugs like bromium. You also have lycinum mentioned for dust aggravation. But this is a remedy that will be very useful for the acute episodes of sneezing, itching in the nose, and the symptoms of hay fever that come on from dust. By the way, it's also a very good drug for pains that are left after influenza. So post-influenzal myalgia, you normally think of drugs like Rustox, you think of Eupatorium for patients who have pains that remain after influenza, but rarely is a common part of your diet the tomato. Solanum lycopersicum is basically the tomato. This is a remedy that's very useful for pains that remain after influenza. There's also a pain in the right deltoid and the pectoralis muscles. So that's the region which sometimes get very painful. One very important constitutional remedy that you should think of when a person comes with colds is Natrum muriaticum. It's infallible for stopping a cold which commences with sneezing. 99% of the time, most of us think of drugs like arsenicum album, arsenicum iodatum, or we think of Sabadella when a person has lots of sneezing. But we very frequently miss out a very important constitutional drug, which works even at the acute level in this case. And that is Natrum muriaticum for infallible for stopping a cold, which commences with sneezing. And on the other hand, do you know of any remedy that has got colds that come with a lot of chilliness? The whole body starts feeling chilly and then they start with a cold. That's a drug that is very much in the news right now. Lots of controversies about homeopathic prophylactics in COVID-19, and that is Camphora. And you can see here, let me just move this aside. First stages of a cold with chilliness and sneezing. So camphor, chills. Camphor is otherwise known for its state of collapse. As you can see here, pictures a state of collapse with icy coldness of the whole body. So the first stages of a cold, when it begins with chilliness and sneezing, you should think of this particular remedy, Camphora. I'm not saying we are looking at specifics. I'm just throwing out remedies at you because these are the remedies we miss out in practice, because what the mind does not know, the eye does not see. So if you are able to even think of these remedies, you might want to go back, open up your books of Materia Medica and see whether the rest of the symptoms fit, and you can think of giving Camphora in such cases. Like in case of Camphora, any change of weather would cause a profuse watery nasal discharge. So they have a fluent coryza from a change of weather. Do you know of any remedy that has got ailments from warm, moist, relaxing weather? The classic time of the year, especially in India, in the month of May and June, where it rains a bit and then it doesn't, and then it gets very sultry and humid and hot, and you have a warm, moist, relaxing weather. In the US, for us, Florida and those and such places, you might find this warm, moist, relaxing weather, where these two remedies might be very important. Three of them actually. One is Ipecac, the other is Gelsemium, and the third is Carboveg. Now all three have different spheres of action. So Ipecac would cause a lot of gastric symptoms and nausea, and it will also be useful for all sorts of fevers. Same with Gelsemium. When you have viral fevers that come on in this warm, moist, relaxing weather, just the end of summer and beginning of the rains, and the patient starts getting fever with chilliness, chills going up and down the spine, thirstlessness. And Carboveg, of course, will be more for the gastric symptoms. So change of weather, a remedy that we normally think of either arsenic or Dulcamara when there's coryza from change of weather. Camphora is a drug that is quite frequently missed out. There are two other remedies which are very important for, they are rare, they are extremely rare, but they are much more commonly used in Southern America by homeopaths there. Not when I mean Southern America, I mean South America, the continent. One of them is known to break up a cold. So let's go and look at the Materia Medica and see if we can find that. So let's take, it's a remedy called Saponaria, of great use in the treatments of acute colds, coryza, sore throat, will often break up a cold. Now, what is more peculiar is also that it has symptoms very similar to opium. Utter indifference to pain or possible death, apathetic, depressed, with sleepiness. So our stereotype picture of opium is not just opium, but there are other remedies too. And once again, what the mind does not know, the eye does not see. This is the soap root, and this is a drug that you could think of when a person has acute colds and you want to just break it, just stop the cold right away. So Natramur, infallible for stopping a cold that begins with sneezing. Camphora, you'll have a lot of chilliness, and this remedy breaks up a cold. The other drug is Quilaya, Quilaya saponaria. Most effective in the beginning of coryza, frequently checking its further development. So this is again a South American plant, the chili soap bark. I believe that just like how there's a theory amongst nutritionists that you should eat food, especially those that are plant-based, pick up plants that are growing in your region and eat those, because your body will adapt to that food very well, because it is growing in the same environment as you, the same soil, in the same region. It's also exposed to the same elements and the same weather. I believe very strongly that the Materia Medica also you should study, especially when you want to prescribe. Look at the local plants, the local remedies. Plants that are growing in your region, they are going to be very effective for you because they have adapted to the same environment, to the same weather, to the same soil as you have living in that particular region. And my good friend, Dr. Todd Rowe, who heads the American Medical College of Homeopathy, he's been doing a lot of work proving remedies that are native to his state. He is in the state of Arizona in USA, and he has been proving a lot of remedies, plants as well as animal remedies that are native to Arizona, because of the same thing. If you can prove those remedies, you are going to be able to find a wealth of material that can be used for the local people. So if you're treating people who are native to Arizona, why not give them remedies that are prepared from things that are growing there or living there? And that might have a much better effect instead of making esoteric provings of things which you may never even be able to get hold of. So going back to our PowerPoint presentation, we talked about camphora. This is one rubric which I have been using very frequently. This is from Borik's repertory. This also makes me point out to you that don't just stick to one repertory when you are studying your homeopathy. You have to use all the different repertories, just like how you need to study all the different Materia Medica. In fact, even after 25 years of teaching in India, when I was the head of the department, before every lecture, I used to read at least 20 to 25 books. Even if it was for a short tutorial for a group of maybe 10 students, I would still want to read, because every time you read something, you will find something new. And if you can find something new, you can share it with people, and they are going to be a bit more richer in the knowledge of homeopathy. So just like how you read different books of Materia Medica, read different repertories. Don't make one your favorite. Look at all the repertories. And in Borik's repertory, you have just one drug for chronic tendency to sneeze. Again, chronic allergies. Every morning they wake up and they sneeze. You would normally think of Amon Carb, you would think of Nux vomica, but a person who has chronic sneezing, we often miss out silica. Another rubric that fits into silica is nose block every time they catch a cold. There have been at least 10 cases of bronchial asthma which we have cured using these two rubrics which we found in those patients. So it works not only as an acute remedy, but it has been working for us also as a constitutional drug. So nose obstruction after every cold, think of silica as the drug. So we've been talking about allergies all this time, and usually allergies are in spring. And I'm sure you all will agree with me that the remedies that we think of for spring aggravation, two of them are allium cepa and the other one is lachesis. They are two remedies which we know, at least at the undergraduate level, they are very good for spring aggravation. Now, is there any other remedy that you could think of which has itching in the month of March? That's spring. Springtime is March. In fact, the rubric is also something that tells you about itching in spring. Do you know which remedy that could be? That remedy is the one that follows silica in the cyclical relationship it shares with pulsatilla and floric acid. So you have a cyclical relationship of silica, pulsatilla, silica, floric acid. And after some time, the floric acid patient again shows symptoms of pulsatilla, and you might keep going around these three remedies while the patient continues to improve. So floric acid has this symptom. Let's see if we can find it in the repertory. Open repertory. We'll look at Kent. Nose, itching, sorry, skin. Itching. Spring in the floric acid and lachesis. Now in the month of March, there's only one remedy, floric acid. Let's go back to our silica here. By the way, the stereotype picture of floric acid is a person who you see hanging at street corners, looking at girls, ogling at girls, increased sexual desire. But very few of us know that floric acid, I'm again digressing from our respiratory, but I like to keep giving you a lot of information which may or may not be relevant to what's going on, but it is just a remedy relationship. So unfortunately, we'll have to go back to, let's go back to the Materia Medica and read floric acid from Kent. Can anyone find Kent here? He's lost. Yeah, there he is. In floric acid, you find that apart from what we normally know, see here he talks about pulsatilla, silica, and floric acid cyclical relationship. He also talks about other remedies having a similar cyclical relationship, which you should know. Sulfur calcarea lycopodium, sulfur sarsaparilla sepia, Colocin, Causticum, Staphysagra. So these are the cyclical remedies that you should keep in mind. So you have pulsatilla, silicea, fluoric acid are also in the same way cyclically related. So all the time we think of fluoric acid as somebody who has a lot of strength, lot of vigor, lot of sexual stamina, always has one girl in every port. That's what you're taught as when you're in college. But there is something about this remedy which you should look for. Where is it gone? Here it is. Let me just increase the font size. So we think of fluoric acid mainly for a person who has this increased sexual desire, but look at this. He takes an aversion to his children and to his dearest friends and his wife. That is, he has lost the true and noble and orderly affection and friendship and companionship which ought to exist, and he fights against it. An orderly man considers his wife his best friend, and he would rather stay with her than go anywhere else. To him, there is no place like home. Now, when a man arrives at that state, when he wants to go somewhere else, he wants to go away from home, that he's disturbed at home, everything annoys him at home, he no longer loves his children as he once did, he needs fluoric acid. Feeling of indifference towards those he loves best. So this is the sepia state, but in the male. Sepia is more frequently indicated in women, while fluoric acid, you will find this is another aspect of fluoric acid which we end up overlooking. So I know I've digressed a bit, but it's always good to know something more than what you should. So we've talked till now about sneezing, we've talked about the upper respiratory tract. Now let's go to the coughing. Cough. Which is the remedy, which is the first remedy for injuries? I'm sure you all will say it is arnica. Which is the remedy, which is the first remedy for inflammations, acute inflammations. The first drug you give whenever there's acute inflammation, you'll think of aconite. Which is the first remedy you will think of for any cough? The first remedy you should give for cough, either you're going to think of spongia, you're going to think of Drosera, because those are the remedies you are taught in your first and second year of college at the homeopathic college. But the remedy that is like the first aid in injury is arnica. The first remedy for inflammation is aconite. The first remedy for cough is mentha piperita. It is to dry cough, however caused, what arnica is to injuries and aconite is to inflammatory complaints. This is given in Dictionary of Practical Materia Medica, and that is why you need to read, and read. Read all the books. You need, once you are in practice, you need to be one up over your patient's disease, and you need to study and read the Materia Medica. So mentha piperita, the peppermint. You enjoy putting the peppermint in your mouth. It helps for your throat. Now in California, every year we have forest fires. And these forest fires are not like just a small amount, but it's thousands of acres of the trees and the mountains get burnt. And the smoke, it travels hundreds of miles. So if the forest fire is 100 miles away, in our region, we will still get a lot of smoke. Some days you can't even see the sky. And some of my friends at the California Homeopathic Medical Society, where we are Daksha and our board members, they have been treating, because they are closer to that area, they have been treating people with homeopathy along with the Red Cross when they are exposed to these forest fires. We have been treating such patients in our locality because that smoke comes all the way down here, and Mentha piperita is the drug for exposure to smoke. The inhalation of the smallest quantity of smoke, either of coal, wood, or tobacco, at once induced a most distressing paroxysm. So smoke inhalation. Think of Mentha piperita. The first drug for cough. Any dry cough, the first drug you should think of is Mentha piperita. Now, most of the time when we are looking at cough, a person comes with cough which is dry at night. Our mind starts thinking, is it before midnight or is it after midnight? If it's before midnight, then we know it is spongia. If it's after midnight, then we think of Drosera. Simple, easy way to differentiate two remedies. Though, of course, that's not the only way in which you differentiate these two drugs, but it makes it easy for you. If a patient says, I start coughing at night and it goes on till midnight, and before midnight I'm worse, you give Spongia. And after midnight, if I get worse, then you think of Drosera. But there's another remedy. If you look at Kent's, any of the repertories, but Kent is the easiest. Cough, dry, midnight after, until daybreak. There's only one remedy for it, and that's Nux vomica. So all the time that we've been giving Drosera to our patients and they don't respond, maybe we missed out Nux vomica. Cough, midnight after, until daybreak. In fact, these two sub-rubrics that you have, lying on back aggravates, lying on side ameliorates, both of these, you have only one remedy, Nux vomica and Nux vomica. You're most welcome to check that out on your own later. Or if some of you have your software open, you can check this rubric. Cough, dry, midnight, after daybreak until. And then the sub-rubric lying on back aggravates is Nux vomica 2 marks. Lying on side ameliorates is Nux vomica 2 marks. So how do we differentiate these? Why is it that all the time we've been giving Drosera, but here is now one remedy that wants to claim equal status and says, no, even I am as important. Midnight after, you should think of me too. If you study Drosera from Allen's keynotes, you see the relationship complementary to Nux vomica. So they are complementary to each other. Nux and Drosera are complementary. So how do you differentiate the two? There are lots of things that are different in the two remedies. The word here is dry. If it's a dry cough which comes on after midnight, you think of Nux vomica. In case of Drosera, you find the patient usually has a lot of moist sounds too. You should think of Drosera when the miasm is more tubercular. Nux vomica when the miasm is more soric. Also remember that Drosera otherwise is also known for tuberculosis of the bones. In fact, the best book to refer to when you want to study this drug, Drosera, is Margaret Tyler's Drug Pictures. She has mentioned that there are only two people, at least during her time, who knew about Drosera, she and Kent. And she gives a wonderful monograph of Drosera, and she explains the symptoms beautifully in that book of hers. So you should always think of reading Margaret Tyler's Drosera. So cough, which is worse after midnight until daybreak. Our stereotype of Drosera is now broken because now we also have Nux vomica which comes up. Nux vomica will have more of other peculiar symptoms like an ineffectual urging for stools. In case of Drosera, you'll have more of hemorrhagic phenomena. There's a tendency to nosebleeds, tendency to epistaxis. That's the tubercular miasm that comes into the picture. So basically, you must read, you must study your materia medica all the time. And every time you read a drug, always ask yourself, how is it similar or how is it different from the other remedy that I know? Or which are the other remedies which have similar symptoms, and how can I differentiate them? That's the only way you are going to be able to put in more effort in treating your patients in the future. Now, one of the symptoms that most of our patients, mothers and fathers, will come to you with when they have a child with cough is that my child coughs through the night. All of us wake up. We are so worried about him. He keeps coughing and coughing and coughing. When we go to his room and when we go to the bed, he is completely unaware of the fact that he's coughing. He's blissfully in deep sleep, but he's coughing in his sleep. There's a rubric for that in Borik's repertory. If you see Borik's repertory, cough, cause, aggravation, falling asleep, especially in children, tickling cough without waking. One of the most important remedies mentioned here is Aralia racemosa. I'm not sure if you have ever used Aralia racemosa, but it has become a very important part of our armamentarium, at least in our practice. When a person has cough, which is during first sleep, so they lie down and within a few minutes or maybe half an hour, they start coughing. And most of the time, it's a dry, irritating cough. Most of the time, it's because of a post-nasal drip. There's a drip into the throat that makes them cough, but it's not great enough to make them wake up. So the child is constantly sleeping, but coughing in the sleep. Don't forget your chamomilla. Chamomilla is another child that can have cough again at night during sleep. And then verbascum. Verbascum has a cough which is very peculiar. It is called what is called the basso profundo. It's a deep, hoarse, barking cough. So when you have a basso profundo, a deep, hoarse, barking cough, verbascum is the drug you should think of. Verbascum is used also externally as mullein oil. It is used to put in the ears when a person has pain in the ears. Mullein oil is very commonly used as the remedy. Now, just a clinical hint, many cases of eosinophilia, they respond well to nitric acid. This is something that clinically has been found useful. It's not worth using it as a specific, but nitric acid has a cough which could, like in this case, be at night. The child will not wake up, will keep coughing. There's a tickling cough all the time. But in adults, you might even think of nitric acid as a remedy for eosinophilia. Very often you find you're missing out nitric acid and you're prescribing silica to your patients in your practice, especially when you're looking at a so-called pseudo-constitutional prescription. You want to prescribe a constitutional, but you are more stuck towards giving something which is on the acute side, and you are willing to neglect some of the other important symptoms. So what are the important features on which you would prescribe silica? Many of you would look at the nails and say, oh, there are white spots in the nails. That is silica. And then you'll ask the patient, do you sweat a lot? And the patient says, yes, I sweat a lot on my palms and my soles. So you feel very happy, you confirm silica. And then you find that they also have splinter-like sensation in the throat. And that also helps you confirm silica. But are you aware that nitric acid has the exact same symptoms? If you look at nitric acid, look at the repertory again. Let's go to extremities and take spotted nails. Spots in the nails, silica is 3 marks. Nitric acid is 2 marks. So this is a remedy that we miss out because what the mind does not know, the eye does not see. Now let's look at perspiration. I'll just look at the foot. So you have silica. Oh, it went to odor, sorry. Perspiration. Foot. Let's take soul. Nitric acid is 3 marks. Silica is 3 marks. So it is equally important. And both of them have splinter-like sensation. They'll have it in the throat. Both of them are good remedies for fissures. Both of them have got very painful stools, and they have a pain, and as if there's something poking or stitching or cutting inside. So they are very similar to each other, and that's why, of course, they are also extremely different. Nitric acid mental state is completely different from the silica state, but that's something that you need to keep in mind. And sometimes you have a nitric acid state, but because you see the white spots and you see the sweating of the palms and mainly the soles, you are tempted to give silica, and you make a mess of your prescription. Both of them have got fissures. Nitric acid has a greater tendency to diarrhea. Silica will have a greater tendency to constipation, and sometimes you have what is known as shy stools. They are partly expelled, and because of the spasms of the sphincter, they're let go and the stools recede back into the anus, in the rectum. So nitric acid is a remedy you should keep in mind because it has symptoms which could be similar to silica, and you might miss nitric acid and end up giving silica as a wrong prescription. So we talked about verbascum and the fact that the patient has a loss of voice in the basso profundo. Sometimes patients who come with loss of voice and you need an immediate response, he has to speak, he has a webinar in 1 hour and now he's lost his voice. What do? You give Populus candicans. It has a deep hoarse voice and even aphonia, and it is an instantaneous voice producer. Now, like the other remedies, this is also a drug for cough of children, which is caused by nasopharyngeal catarrh, and the mucus drops from the posterior nares. So it drips into the back of the throat, and the patient will end up having a cough. Coca, of course, you all know, we all think of coca only for one, and that is it's a mountaineer's remedy. And some of you who are more aware of the sexual symptoms, you have a sensation as if the penis is absent. So that's basically impotency. They are diabetic and they have impotency, and they feel that there's no life left in the penis. So coca is a drug used by the South American natives, and they used to chew upon it, and it gave them a lot of strength to climb up the mountains. And many of these Mayan culture pyramids that you see were built by people who used to chew upon coca, and they used to carry heavy loads all the way up and put those stones and create that those huge monuments out there. So apart from that, it's also the drug which is a precursor of cocaine. The active principle of coca is cocaine, and it is also a remedy for a loss of voice. So give 5 to 6 drops every half hour, 2 hours before the expected demand on the voice. So this is another remedy you should think of when you suddenly lose your voice. With Dr. Gaurang talking almost every day and he loses a voice, I'm sure one of these remedies might be useful for him. So you find there is weak vocal cords and hoarseness, worse after talking. One other rubric that's interesting, which most people don't know about, is asthmatic respiration from a fatty degeneration of the heart. Arnica is the remedy that you should keep in mind. So arnica has basically an injury to the heart. There's a fatty degeneration and the patient gets an asthmatic respiration. One other remedy that you should think of for a fatty degeneration of the heart is arsenicum iodatum. Now, I don't know if you're aware of this, but this is the only remedy, I think, in our Materia Medica where it has been recommended that you give, if you're giving arsenicum iodatum in the low potency, you must always give it after a meal or with a meal. We normally tell our patients don't eat anything for 10 minutes or 15 minutes before and after the dose because you want the full absorption of the medicine. Now, here is one remedy which has been mentioned in our literature. Our side. Let's see from Clark. Arsenic iodide has a marked action in the stomach and when given low, needs to be given after food if unpleasant symptoms are to be avoided. So this is also a drug for fatty degeneration of the heart. You'll find that this remedy has a great action on the heart. It's also very good for basically tuberculous symptoms. But when you're giving it very low, whether it's for the treatment of tuberculosis or whether you're treating a cardiac condition with pathology, make sure that you don't cause an aggravation of the symptoms because it can cause stomach complications as a result of the low potencies. Do you know of any other remedies where there have been certain food and dietary restrictions? The standard thing that homeopath says, don't eat onions, don't drink coffee, don't take any aromatic stuff, don't eat garlic with the medicines. But in the case of certain remedies, it has been very clearly mentioned that you must not take a certain article of food in the diet. One of them, let's go back, I'm sorry, but we keep going to and fro, is bromium. Let's see bromium from Borix Materia Medica and see in the relations. He writes, salt inhibits the action of bromium. Is there any other drug which can be used, you can think of for the same salt inhibiting the action? Remember, bromium is known for its action on glands, the thyroid, and we have Phytolacca, another drug which has an action on the thyroid, on the glands, and here you find milk and salt. Antidotes, milk and salt. So when they're on homeopathy, certain remedies, you do need to tell them to go easy on certain foods, which if you don't read carefully, you might miss out and you don't get the full effect that you are expecting because you have missed out on the important dietary restrictions. And that's, I think, what Hahnemann has told us, importance of diet and regimen. And sometimes some of these things, they interfere with the homeopathic remedy. Phytolacca should ideally be given when you're treating patients with enlarged thyroids or goiters or breast tumors. If you read what Nash has to say, search for Nash now. There are too many books in this software. Here, leaders in homeopathic therapeutics. I think he is mentioned somewhere. Here. I have removed a great many suspicious lumps or tumors in the breast, some of them of years standing, by giving a dose of Phytolacca CM once a month during the wane of the moon. So when between full moon and new moon, as the moon is slowly reducing in size, he has found it very useful. Why it happens, he don't know, but he cures even goiter the same way with some other remedy. So this is something that you need to know. Pick up things that people have clinically found useful and try and put that in your practice and see how much it can help. I think we have overshot and there are lots of slides, but I would like to just talk about one, let's forget all this now. Yeah, remedy relationship. What pains me the most is people prescribing Antim-Tart whenever they have a patient who comes with cough, which has a lot of rattling in their chest. If a patient has come to you with cough with rattling, he's not Antim-Tart. Antimonium tartaricum is a drug for the death rattle. Patient, you will have to go and visit the patient in the hospital or in his house. He cannot walk to you because he is in a very bad respiratory failure. He's got rattling in the chest. He's drowning in his own secretions. And we often give Antim-Tart to these patients. Sometimes it's partially similar and the patient somewhat improves, but not completely. So which are the other remedies we should think of? I think Ipecac and Antim-Tart are very close to each other. Both have an action on the pneumogastric nerve, which is now of course known as the vagus nerve. But the difference is that Ipecac causes an irritation of the vagus nerve, and that irritation leads to spasms. So it's a spasmodic cough. They have a cough which is with a lot of spasms. The cough will also be loose and there'll be some amount of rattling because the secretions form. It irritates the lining and it causes the secretions to form. Pneumo and gastric, so it affects the stomach as well as the lungs, and that's why you have a constant retching, constant nausea in Ipecac. Nausea which is not better by vomiting, mainly because there's nothing wrong with the stomach. It's the innervation of the stomach, the nerve supply to the stomach, which is irritating the stomach, and the stomach goes into spasms. So if a person has come to you in an Ipecac state with a lot of cough, and they are in sometimes children with bronchiolitis respond well to Ipecac. After some days of giving the medicine, the patient's mother comes back and says, "Doctor, I think my child is coughing less, but I do hear some bubbling and rattling, but he's coughing much less than before. Is that a good sign?" Most likely it is not. It is now going into a state of a depression of the pneumogastric nerve. So Ipecac causes irritation. Antim-Tart is the drug when you have a depression of the pneumogastric nerve. So the patient coughs less, the patient expectorates less. So there's a lot of rattling and bubbling in the chest, but he has difficulty in expectorating because he has lost the expulsive power. Ipecac had too much of spasms, and over here now there is relaxation. So Antim-Tart will be useful in the last stage. When there's bubbling, rattling, they've turned blue, they're cyanosed, they are worse at 3 in the morning. And you find that there is also some amount of drowsiness. They become very irritable. Now those symptoms are signs of hypercapnia or increased carbon dioxide concentrations in the blood. When these carbon dioxide concentrations reach the maximum possible, then you find it spreads, or it actually crosses the blood-brain barrier and enters the cerebral circulation. When that happens, you will find the patient becomes drowsy, the patient becomes very irritable, and of course the patient has turned blue because he's also hypoxemic. So Antim-Tart is never to be given in the first stage when a person comes with rattling. In that case, I would think of Heparself, I would think of Amoncarb, I would think of Bromium, or I would think of Caliself. Amoncarb, like Antim-Tart, is 3 in the morning, but in Antim-Tart it is chronic bronchitis. Amoncarb is emphysema. Amoncarb has easy expectoration. Caliself has 3 a.m. aggravation, but there is easy expectoration, which is yellow, and the patient is extremely thirsty. Antim-Tart is thirstless and has a white coating of tongue. Ipecac is thirstless but has a clean tongue. Bromium, you'll find when he coughs, the rattling is heard from the throat and not from the lungs. And in case of Heparself, it starts as a dry, hoarse, barking cough, and then it turns into a loose, moist, rattling cough. Now, Ipecac either goes into an Antim-Tart state or you have to follow up with Cuprum metallicum. Ipecac is a plant that grows best in soils rich in copper. And so you find most of the spasmodic effect of Cuprum metallicum is also seen in Ipecac. Spasms of the stomach, spasms of the respiratory tract, spasms of the intestines, and they are also known to get convulsions or seizures. So Ipecac and Cuprum, or Ipecac followed by Antimtart. And Antimtart, Carboveg, and opium are 3 remedies that you could think of for respiratory failure. I think we can stop here. I've taken too much of your the time today. Gaurang, all over to you.